Welcome to our CyberTalks interview series. I'm Wyatt Cash on behalf of CyberScoop, and I'm here with Steve Orrin, Federal Chief Technology Officer at Intel. Steve, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, let me start by asking, there's been a lot thrown at Chief Information Security Officers in 2020. How would you describe how 2020 has changed the CISO's role?
I think having to go to fully work from home workforce has fundamentally to change the way that we've deployed, and CISOs are looking at deploying security policies and protecting their infrastructure. We are much more reliant on cloud technologies now, as well as really pushing our security policies to the edge, to those client systems, and enforcing strong practices at the client so that your perimeter is extended now to the home office. And so we've seen changes in the way they've deployed security, but also how they're monitoring and how they're managing security throughout the enterprise, because now the enterprise does truly encompass everyone's home.
Well, next I'd like to ask about the fact that, workforces are now so much more distributed than they were months ago and are likely to remain that way for the foreseeable future. What concepts do you believe are helping with that shift? Things like zero trust or multi-factor authentication or other techniques?
So I think both of those are foundational technologies that need to be adopted. And if they were in pilot phases at companies before, they've been moved forward into full production. Because we've pushed the edge of the data center all the way out to the client and to the work from home environment, we need to be able to apply those stronger security controls that typically were saved for inside the enterprise all the way out. So having zero trust so that you really can verify the role and the capability of the user before giving them access. Using things like multi-factor authentication and multi-step authentication as means to get better authentication of an endpoint before giving it in. And it's important to note that it's not just about user authentication. A lot of people think of two-factor or multi-factor as thinking of just the user. It's also the device they're using and being able to fully authenticate the device, that its security is up to date, that it's been patched, that has the latest virus stat files, and that it's operating in a known good behavior before giving it access is one of the foundational tenets of zero trust. To do that, you need to be able to trust the client. And that is where security technologies built into client systems come into play to verify the operating system, verify the boot time, and verify the applications and runtimes prior to getting access to corporate data at the data center over VPN, or to now where a lot of CISOs are going to cloud-based services as a means to better secure data at scale and to be able to scale to meet the requirements of a work-from-home workforce.
Well, next, Steve, I'd like to ask, IoT and 5G technologies continue to come online in the US, and that obviously means more technology being brought in-house to handle those improvements. And with those improvements come supply chain concerns. So how should enterprises collectively handle those concerns while still making sure that we don't fall behind in using those technologies?
I think it starts and stops with visibility or transparency. You need to be able to understand your supply chain, understand the components that are coming in. And it oftentimes goes beyond just knowing that I'm getting a particular device from a particular vendor. You need to know what's inside so that you can properly secure it, properly assess its supply chain, and what are the piece part components that made up that overall system. As we put on these new edge nodes that are doing AI inferencing and are connected over 5G, we need to understand that external infrastructure, get visibility into the devices, but then also manage them throughout their life cycle so that we know how we're going to update and manage security updates and security posture changes for those systems. We need to be able to manage them really across their life cycle. But we also need to be able to protect them out in the field as they're deployed. And that requires leveraging technologies in those systems or requiring that our vendors supply us technologies that allow us to secure that system and to protect it throughout its life cycle. Secure updates, secure boot, being able to do runtime security operations so that you know the data coming from a given sister getting into the edge compute node is protected and its confidentiality, integrity are sacrosanct. At the same time, making sure that your 5G connectivity and your other wireless connectivity are leveraging all the security protocols that are being brought to bear.
Well, lastly, Steve, as cyber threats continue to grow in sophistication, organizations obviously face a persistent challenge just recruiting the necessary cybersecurity skills and professionals capable of protecting their systems, right? So, how do we, as an industry, and close the gaps that exist in the nation's current cybersecurity education and training landscape?
Right, that is a great question, and it is really a big challenge. How do we keep educating the talent, both the new talent that comes into the industry as well as the existing talent to keep up with the ever-changing threat landscape? And there are a variety of mechanisms. One is implementing mentoring, and so having your security professionals, the small staff you have, take in folks from outside the organization, help train them, help bring them in. One thing that I think works really well is rotation assignments. So having folks from other parts of IT and other parts of the lines of business and mission come into security and rotate through to get that training live on the job and then be able to bring that back to their organizations. And we've got to invest in the future. We've got to get better curriculum into the hands of the next generation of workforce so they understand security. But we also have to think a little differently. It's not just about security for security's sake. It's not classic cybersecurity. We need to start thinking about AI security, 5G security. These areas of focus that typically are their own domains, we need to bring security there. And we need to train those professionals, those data scientists, those architects that are building those next generation systems to become security aware and security conversant so they can build that security in as part of their job going forward. So it's more than just making sure we have good security talent. We need to broaden the focus so that multiple areas of focus get security as part of their mantra as well.
Well, Steve, Orrin, thanks so much for joining us and sharing some of your insights.
My pleasure. Thank you.